Hello and welcome. I'm Shadow of Shadow Gaming, bringing you episode 21 of Programming of Shadow. In today's lesson, we're going to be talking about namespaces. So, let's begin. So I've already actually got a namespace here. So when I created this, I ran .NET Run, used program main just to generate. I'm pretty sure I've shown this before, but just to show the main program, which is the entry point for C#. So this is where everything begins. And it generated us a namespace here. Do a control dot here. There we go. So a namespace is just a way to organize classes, files, or classes, enums, other stuff like structs. It's a higher level organization, so you can put related things together. That's really all a namespace is. So it's simple. There's a little variation here. So let's make some use of it. So let's say we have two. So we have let's do a class. Let's say class. Say we have some reason we want to do a class with the same name. Do class report. Let's spell. Here it tells you the namespace already contains the definition for report. If you don't have a namespace, you'll get the similar thing. The global namespace already contains the definition of report. So it's saying you can't have two of the same name in the same namespace. That's the important bit. So, in C# methods are done, or C# things are done based on name. So you need to have a unique name. See, this works because global namespace is different than this one. And to use this, you could do this. I used to know how to do this. Well, I don't remember how to call that. Hope I should have checked that beforehand. I clearly don't remember. There's the right one. Let's add one here. The namespace learning dot report one equals new. Yeah, I don't remember how to access this one. I should because I practiced it earlier in the week, but I do not remember at this moment. I'll see if it comes back to me. But how to do it through if you have another namespace? Let's do a namespace. I don't know. Maybe we're a company. Let's do finances. Then we could come up here and do financial report. There's the qualified name. So that's saying this is the entire name. This is the first one reports or is this report. The other one's this one. And using namespaces, we're able to differentiate between them. Sorry about that. Let's continue. Let's see, what do we want? Let's say so we don't want to use it like this. We don't have to. Well, we sort of have to since the names are the same, but to reference it, they weren't the or wait a minute. This is the implicit using thing again. Now it's going to tell me this doesn't work right. There we go. Let's see if this works. I'm actually surprised. Let's do CTOR. We'll do financial report. Up here, let's add another one. Let's do we're just doing the same thing here, just I could spell. Just for another one, copy this. There we go. Let's do it like that. We'll get rid of this one. Now it doesn't know which one we're doing, so now we'll do. There we go. See this one now. Now it's pulling report here, and it knows it's a research and development report because of the using statement. So these using statements are actually namespaces. It's telling C# which namespaces to use. We run this. Run. We should see both reports and a hello world because I didn't get rid of it. There we go. R&D report, financial report. So, so far so good. So if we don't want to do that, we have to do something like this though. Let's do using finance. Now there's a confliction. So to fix that, blue qualify report, and now I'm going to have to pick one. So we'll say that one's research. That one's finance. So there we go. That's the same thing, but as you see, we're having to do it directly, even if we include it up here. And I think using directive is unnecessary. So since it's fully qualified, C# knows which one you're doing anyway. If there's any ambiguity, you have to specify it. If this was a different name, it wouldn't matter at that point. So there's a little primer. So this is this style here is called scope namespaces. Looks like it might be called nested namespaces actually. Either way, what that means is anything in the scope, these guys, the braces, that's in the namespace, and if it's not there, it's not there. Let's say here we have here and do namespace element. Notice structure doesn't match, but it doesn't complain about that. So you can have multiple things, and let's say we have public class research materials. So you can have the same namespace, and if we look here in the namespace, we can see There's report material or research materials. So you can have multiple namespaces that are the same thing, and what it does is it combines them. That's because normally you would do something like this. So, remove there. Let's do it like this. Let's add a finance. Add another folder. Add another folder. This is how I would normally do it. A little easier in an IDE, but we'll go with this. But now this is giving us a warning. Namespace finance doesn't match folder structure expected. Namespace learning. Let's fix that. Now if we go up to finance, notice it still says that does not match folder structure. Expected namespace learning. So let's see. So that's the outer folder. We do a ls here. Well, you can see it from my path. You can do ls dot dot. Well, that's not useful, but we can see that's where I'm at. Namespace learning. So if we do ls here, here's the folder structure, and it's saying it expects that. What you can do to fix that is you can say come up here and do a dot, and it should. There we go. So there it's saying it's part of this folder, and then it's in the finance namespace, which is held within this folder. And do the same thing over here in R&D. There we go. So that matches. So that is controlled implicitly by root namespace here. So if we said something else, let's say it's just I don't know, maybe some news and company. Let's say company. We'll just do my company. And now if we go back to them, now these are wrong. Although it may take a moment to. In fact, I may have to build. Let's rebuild. There we go. Does not match folder structure. Now it's expecting my company because we said, okay, use this as the root namespace. So that's all that's saying is that's a way to make it so that you have stuff grouped correctly. So you're controlling the group here. That's really useful when you're looking at classes from elsewhere. Your report's now invalid because we need to fully qualify the R&D report. So there's a little more. Here, this one's now wrong too because of that. There, now that's the correct namespace for us. So one of the other options here is convert to file scoped. So if we do that, it just puts a semicolon and removes the scope. Block scoped is what this one's calling the other one. I think I've actually seen it as nested is the actual name, but there's not a lot of difference. It's everything in here is scoped. In this one, it's everything in the file is in this namespace. Even this stuff up here that's not here, this is technically here, but a using statement doesn't actually belong in a namespace. It's telling you it's included. A little different, but I would prefer generally this, and if you need another namespace, usually I would recommend in another file. The reason is it keeps things a little clearer when you go to find them. You would be able to find it here, and this keeps the level of nesting. See how far right this is getting? this cuts out an entire layer of nesting out of the picture that's, in my opinion, not that useful. That being said, if you find older code, it'll always be the file scope because, or it'll be nested because file scope's relatively new. It came in C# 10, I think. So .NET 8 or 7. I actually don't know which one it was, but it might have been 6. Somewhere right in there though, they added this, and to me, it's a good use because it just makes everything a little shorter. So if you had even longer spaces, like I know some projects use 8 spaces tabs. I do not like that. I like 4 too, but it keeps it on one screen, and that can be really nice and actually beneficial as well. Another thing is it can control what you're looking at. We have system here. We've also used use this one so we could have a list of, let's do report. Reports equals new. Let's make an report. Make a new folder. Let's call it interfaces. I'm not saying this is a good design either, but I've seen this before as well. Do public interface report. We'll say it has a public void display. And it doesn't have to be public, that's all. Because it gets the value of the interface. There, like I said, I prefer file scope. There we go. And now if we go over here and make reports, do report. Problem with that is we have to use a namespace. Now we're not implementing there we go. We won't worry about what it does, but we could do something like that. And now we're using a namespace and we're putting it elsewhere. I'm putting that on a class, not on a method. So there we go. There we go. There's this interface. So now we're actually using interfaces here, even if we're not using this. Now we could put reports. We could do new research and development report and new. I do not know if I like VS Code's license today. So there we go. Now we've got 2 reports, and now we can do for each report and report. Report r.display. Although that's not going to work because of today. We'll just do that. There we go. Now we've implemented it. We can drop system here. That just means we have to do using system. So here we're fully qualified. We don't have to do it. Here we're not fully qualified, so we have to say system. We could do it another layer out, but we could do console. However, console is a static one. So instead, you'll need to do console like this, and you'll have to add static. Now we can just do right line. So to get static members, you have to do something like that. So using static my console. I bet console's a static class, but I actually don't know that for sure, so I wouldn't say that. But it's at least got static methods like WriteLine here. And using static lets you access them, and now we don't have to do system.console.WriteLine. Well, here we've got got it partially. So that's something you might occasionally see. I don't think I've actually ever chosen to use this. I could see maybe it cleans up something here or there, but I've never actually used it myself. Now this should work, so let's try it. Let's do a control dot, as unnecessary. And now let's run. Let's see if we don't get the same thing. Same thing, but we're doing it slightly differently. Those are our reports. So there's a little bit further, so that's a static namespace. So we're using something that's static. Let's see. It's feeling short, but this is really feeling like it's covered all it needs to cover. Let's see. So, yeah, that's pretty much what I want. We could do something like other static classes. You can do this as well. We do using static system.math. Now, if we needed to, we could do the reports, and now we can do URT 42. Need to catch it. Is a double, I believe. That lets us use it without having to say math.square root. Once again, I don't know that I've actually ever used this. I don't know if I've ever seen it used nicely. I bet it could be, but I don't know if I've actually seen it personally. There, we can clean that up since that's an empty constructor. We can just let the compiler do that. Yeah, I think that's all I've got on that. Let's move to another one. Let's do go back over here, and for this we're having to fully qualify the reports names, and that could be long. Like if we weren't in my company here, I don't know what else it would be, but if we were in some other namespace here, let's do my company too, just for example. Now we really need to do one more step. We need to do my company. Let's do that just a second, just to make, for the sake of an example. So now that's getting really long for qualified name. So what you can do is alias the name, and I have seen this used a lot. We could do something like using financial report equals my company dot finances dot report. Then we could just, I picked the wrong one. Here you can see the name can be simplified, and it's dimming it. So simplify name. Now we can just use that as financial report, and that's saying it's aliased as this here. So this, we see this, it equals this. We can do that for the other one too, using RMD report equals my company dot research and development dot report. That's much shorter. You can just see that as well, and I actually have seen those be used before and use the great effect to shrink something that's long. That being said, that is one that I could see something when tripping up someone. So just a heads up that could see that, but that makes it hard to find occasionally. Let's see what if I do F12, what happens. Okay, it actually takes me there, so good. So in the past, it wouldn't happen, and it would instead take you to somewhere that doesn't match. It would take you to this one. That actually did what I wanted it to. It took me back up here, which is correct. Okay, that's actually good. So maybe that's better than it was in the past. So Let's see if we can do one more thing. I'll have to check real quickly how to do this. Let's see if we can get back to that global one I was trying to do. Oh, let's see. It. Let's make this scope real quick. Do class report. It is an I report. You can see there that added a namespace at the top of using. Let's do global report. This one's not part of a namespace, so let's try to use it one more time. Okay, now it can do it because it's do that class in here. Um, there we go. So now let's add one more. There we go. And now if we run this, let's see if we don't get all four. So I recommend against using global variables and global things because, as you just saying, I looked at this earlier in the week and already forgot because I haven't used it. But it can muck stuff up and make it hard to find, make it hard to use, and not something I've seen much of. So there may be a good reason to use something globally, but I have not seen it used. I don't think I've seen it used but one time at all, and it wasn't used. Just a heads up there. So that's how it looks though. There's two colons. And if you've done any C++, you'll recognize that that's how C++ does spaces. Or anything else I would like. Um, no, that's pretty much it. Guess one last topic. So the implicit using thing. I'm not actually sure where those actually show up. Come up here. Using directives are unnecessary. So when you're using implicit usings, some of them are used by default, and some way to check that. I should have looked at how to check for that, but I honestly don't remember. Yeah, I don't remember. There's somewhere though you can get a list of what are the implicit usings. Let me look that up. That probably makes sense to actually go look that up. Um, if you have a global using, if you have a global using something, it's globally. So I would guess that means maybe the system has that somewhere, and that's how it's doing it. Oh, you could see where implicit using that. Oh, here we go. You can add your own with global using, but what you can do elsewhere is there's some default ones. Let's open Firefox. Let's open Firefox in here. Opened it on my desktop and it popped up to UAC instead. What I was trying to get to is here we go. So here's some. That's not right. Wait a minute. Implicit using directives. Here we go. So here's some of the default ones. So link, system collection, those were the two there. These two here were the two that it cut out. Here's some other common ones. So Microsoft has a list of a couple of them. System IO, that's what we use to read and write files. So there's the, I'll try to remember, but I'll probably forget, but I'll try to put that in for the um, in the video in the description. So that way, or that's just if you have implicit on. You notice I've turned it off a couple of times because it hides the details a little more than I would like. I need to skim through this and see if we want to talk about any of these. I don't think we do right now. Maybe in the future. Implicit usings are a thing, and you occasionally run into them. Newer projects, it seems to be on by default. So that if you run into that, that's what's happening. It's that field. Well, that's about all I've got on namespaces. So a lot of content, but really it's a container. It's a place to put your classes, put your enums, put your structs, a place to put them, and then be able to access them and role access and able to use the same name. That's the big one. Is it lets you use the same name, but in a different context. So like we can have different departments have the same report. We had different departments and they had their own tooling, and each one of them had used the same name. Places get around that, and you could still have a centralized everything. So let's recap. So we're going to stop with that. So in this lesson, we've looked at namespaces in C#, and as I was just saying, they let you specify out what your they let you separate out classes and group like-minded classes if there's enums functions. Lets you group them all together so that they're used in a single place. Also lets you use the same name. Like I can have two different reports here in different namespaces, and it just works. You can fully qualify the name, and that's all you need to do. We looked at like I said, nested namespaces, block scope namespaces versus file scoped. Block scope being anything in the bracket, the braces, file being anything in the file, and with a semicolon. We also looked at how namespaces translate to needing the using statements. This is saying using mycompany.interfaces, and I didn't have that line. if I didn't have that line, my report here would need this something like that. And here you can even see it here. It doesn't actually have to have that one. I could simplify it there, but doing something like that lets you control which one you're pointing to, but you have to do what's called you have to have the unique name. You have to have the fully qualified name to do that. And that can be annoying to deal with if you've got it messed up, but most of the time it just works. I've had very little problems over time just messing with different namespaces. So usually it'll just work. Here's another one. We did a global one here in the global namespace, so everything's in this one. And here's how we called it. We did new global port. So I would suggest being cautious with that. I don't know that I'd recommend it, but you can do that. Get something in an implicit using. Apparently, you do a here, here, there. If I put global in there, do I have to? Yeah, there it's unnecessary because now it's an implicitly used one because it's global. So you could have the file of I think it's usually like to using .cs. I think usually if it's auto-generated, it ends up something like that, and then you put your global usings there, and everything should just work. So now if we go over here, I'll have to remember how to do that. There's some way to do what I'm trying to do, but it's not this. There's something you can do there for global usings. I'll have to actually look at that because I'm not remembering what the is right. But that's one thing, but I haven't seen that used well. Maybe it can be, probably can be. Otherwise, they wouldn't have added it. But I don't have a good feel for when I would use it right now. It's there. You can know how to use it. I suggest caution. Make sure it actually makes sense to use. I would argue this doesn't make sense, and just seeing this, it's going to make me have questions. The other implicit usings, I don't have system here. Don't have I collection, and that's because they're implicit. And we looked here that Microsoft's documentation, they list some of the defaults. There's that to consider as well. Looked here, you can have static using static classes, and that lets you not have to do console.writeline because most of the time we've used console.writeline. I'll go ahead and say I'm going to continue using it. That's how I'm used to seeing. If I do a write line, it's a console write line. If I do math, it's math.square root. But you don't have to do that. You can use this and rank it. Just know that everyone may not think of doing that or may not think it that much clearer. So keep that in mind. Maybe don't go wild with it. That's saying it's unnecessary because I added global here just a second ago. Namespaces can be distributed. You can have the same namespace multiple times. And when you go to look at them, everything's combined. If I look at our company.research and development, you can notice here that it shows both classes. That may be about the gist of what we covered. Not the gist of namespaces. So not really a complicated thing. Took me a few lessons to get here just from not having a lot of time to put this together. But that's generally namespacing. So next time, probably going to do at least one more project of the recent concepts. May throw namespaces in. I might in, but probably at least one more of them, and then maybe we'll move on up into more topics. Upcoming is probably going to be two data structure topics, stacks and queues. Possibly, we did linked list last time. We may use the linked list in a queue because it's easier. I haven't thought that far ahead, but that may be a good idea for future and keep building up. But that's where we're going in the future. So that's going to do it for the day. So thanks for watching this video on namespaces. I'm Shadow signing out. Have a good rest of your day.